Hey everyone, this is Ethan with ComTech, and of course we're here to talk about your 2021 IT strategy. Um, I'm going to try to keep this definitely within the bounds of 12 to 12:45. But if you have any questions throughout, Keely will be on here, so definitely ask the question. She'll be responding, or she'll let me know to respond at the end. Um, so let's jump right into it. And the first thing is that I always like to cover for anyone who doesn't know us, and that is who is ComTech. In general, this is us. We have a number of people, unfortunately, that couldn't make it to the Christmas party for COVID reasons and such. But in 1 minute, ComTech. So we started in 1990. We have a team of 15 plus technicians. That changes pretty regularly. We hire pretty often, and we specialize in small to medium business and local government. So you're going to see lots of different areas there. We don't have a particular area that we focus in, just small to medium sized business. And that's where we use that, quite honestly, as an advantage. So we don't specialize in one certain area, but we go across multiple, so we can grab the good pieces and the bad, and apply them to different types of businesses. All in all, we do lots of things, from phones to IT to camera systems to all sorts of things. But 9 times out of 10, we come in and become someone's IT department for those small and medium-sized businesses that need IT help, but they may not want to hire a full-time person, or it still may make sense to bring in kind of ComTech's IT department. So that is enough about us. You guys came here to learn about 2021 planning, or to get some ideas on what you're going to have going forward, or what ComTech recommends that you think about. So with that, let's go straight over to the agenda. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is planning for 2020. And yes, you read that correct. I put 2020 in there because I wanted to show you guys what I kind of said last year, and unfortunately how I didn't really anticipate all of this COVID stuff. I don't think any of us did. Then we're gonna talk about the different pillars or what I call the pillars for planning for 2021. I think there's going to be 3 pillars. First, of course, is going to be cost. That is, I think that's obvious. I think all of us are dealing with COVID and such. We're thinking about how can we cut costs. Is there any areas that we can kind of trim the fat? Another one is work and environment planning. So how are we going to work moving forward? Is everyone going to be moving home? Are we all coming into the office, but we're on a certain rotation schedule? That sort of thing. So there's some certain things to think about there. And then finally is the communication aspect. Again, that goes hand in hand with the rest of that, but imagine all of your workers being at home. It makes communication a little bit more difficult, or definitely different, let's say that. So we need to think about that. And then I'll finally give a final word there and just tell you kind of our personal opinion on what we think is going to happen in 2021, or what we might learn from 2020 through all this. And then, of course, up there in the top right, if you guys have not seen the Tesla giveaway, that will be, we'll talk about it at the end. We're actually giving away the car at the end of this week. So definitely stay tuned to hear about that if you haven't heard about it already. So 2020, where we started. This is one of the slides, I believe it was the agenda slide from the 2020 webinar that I did last year about the same time. I highlighted a few of the items here mainly, at least the end of last year, we were really focused on getting rid of the Windows 7 machines because Microsoft had said that that it was end of life and we had to get them out of there. So we spent a lot of time on that the end of last year. Quite frankly, I'm kind of thanking God that we didn't have to deal with that with COVID at the same time. So thankfully, we kind of got that out of the way right as we went into COVID. Closing security holes, that still exists, still definitely important. ComTech rolled out a cybersecurity platform that I'm certain a number of you that are on this webinar signed up for. So that's still, security is definitely still at the front of our mind. And then using collaboration tools. Same thing we're going to talk a little bit about here. It actually became, and it is becoming more and more of a thing that is needed as users go home and work. Email works, but it can be a little bit slow if you're wanting to, 2 or 3 people to work on the same document at the same time, or to chat about the document quickly and get updates. Email is a little bit slow for that and doesn't work quite as well. So 2020 ending here. I just threw this in here because I saw a couple funny pieces. Lots of social distancing, as you guys know. Everyone's wearing masks and lots of hand washing right now. So I'm going to try to, through this whole presentation, obviously I'm going to mention COVID because it is what is kind of the reality right now. But you guys hear plenty about COVID throughout the news and your day-to-day life. So I'm not going to try to harp on it too much. We all know it's the reality, but there are things that we can definitely learn from it as far as how to pivot and do business a little bit differently. And that's the point of these pillars. So the first pillar, which is what we kind of hear about often, especially as stuff keeps going crazy, we talk about how do we cut cost. So what are the areas that we can cut costs but still keep our business running as optimal as possible? So here's a couple things that we've seen. So some of these guys, you may not use them, and that's perfectly fine. The point of this slide is, have you looked at your license, your subscriptions that you pay for, and are there any that are unused? In the past, when we all were hiring a good number of people and we were growing and moving in that direction, it's not that big of a deal if you have 1 or 2 licenses that are unused. But I'm seeing, unfortunately, I'm seeing a number of businesses that have to lay off, 10 or 20 or 50 people, whatever it may be. When that happens, we want to make sure that we cancel those unused licenses. We don't just have license sitting there and we're paying for monthly and no one's using them at all. That goes for Office 365 license, as you see everyone on there, Adobe Acrobat, that kind of thing. So just think about that. Also, that goes for your line of business applications. If you have an EMR system, if you're in the healthcare industry, or if you have, if you're in the manufacturing and you have a CAD piece of software that's a subscription monthly, if you had to lay off a number of your engineers, we want to make sure we get those items canceled if you're not under contract with those. That way you're not paying for unused license. Now, some of the other places that you can look. So obviously your internet service provider, we pretty much mention that all the time. The reason why we say that is because it's good to have some sort of a, not a refresh cycle, but at least a cycle where you look at your bill with your IT provider to try to figure out, does it make sense to look at any other options? Because a lot of the internet service providers, they'll drop their prices and they don't tell everybody about it, or they change pricing, that sort of thing. I've got a star there, and I'll go over anything with a star. I've got one more slide to kind of go a little bit more in depth. Mobile phones and gym memberships. I put this on here. If you're a business that pays for that for your techs, Just think about that. As far as I know, here at ComTech, we realize that we pay for gym memberships, but a number of people aren't going to the gym, and some of them, no fault to their own, but it's just because now the gym is forcing you to wear a mask all the time, and they're not doing it. Again, that's a small fee, but I could see if you had a larger corporation, then it might make sense. And of course, IT and phones. I'm going to cover that. We would be foolish as an IT and phone provider to not think that we're still potentially on the chopping block as well. Of course, we don't want to be, but we know that it could happen. And if it's going to happen, that's okay. We want to make sure that the business is still stable and can keep running even with the cut. So we'll go over that. So internet service provider, where do you start? Some of those bills, as you guys know, you're looking at the bill and you're going, I don't even know what it's saying. So look at the internet and phone bill, get with your IT department, and I recommend knowing pretty much what each charge is roughly. You don't have to know the exact specifics of it, but if you're seeing charges on there that really make no sense, and especially if the ISP or internet service provider cannot provide a reasonable explanation for it, again, get with your IT department. Business wireless, I see a number of people paying for business wireless. That's okay, but there are other options as far as a one-time fee for a wireless router, and then you don't have to pay monthly for it. So it might save you a little bit. Extra phone lines, a lot of times we'll see extra phone lines that aren't needed, like rollover lines, that sort of thing, based upon whether your phone system needs them. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier the speed versus price. So at least with Spectrum, this isn't as common anymore, but a few years ago, Spectrum had a big pricing drop, but a number of people are still on older contracts. I still see it, and you could get double the speed for literally half the price. And of course, if you have any questions, definitely ask for help. We'll be more than happy to take a look at it. So IT and phones, license check, same exact thing as what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Definitely check with your IT and have them check over your Office 365, your Adobe, your Slack, if you use that, whatever it may be. You want to just look at kind of everything and say, what are we using as far as licensing, and does it make sense to keep using that? Another thing that we've seen is, are all your computers and all of your phones turned on and needed? Now, obviously, we don't want to get into a scenario where we're saying, oh, well, this phone is only turned on from 8 o'clock in the morning until 12 o'clock or until noon or something like that. So getting that granular may not be the best option, but definitely talk with your IT department. Maybe they can get that granular. But if you have the scenario I talked about earlier, you've laid a number of people off, or those people aren't coming into the office, maybe their job has shifted, and you have a number of computers that are literally turned off, unplugged, sitting in the closet, and it doesn't make sense to provide support for them, then get with your IT company. It might make sense to say, hey, what can we do? If there is anything, can we do anything without compromising kind of business in general? What can we do to reduce cost? Now, I want to hit on that last point very, very much. I can't stress this enough. I'm not saying go and cancel your antivirus, go and cancel your cybersecurity program that you have for all of your employees that does all the training, that sort of thing. Don't do that. I'm equating this to, you have 4 cars at home. You've got a kind of a speed car that a nice toy. You've got a truck, and then maybe you and your spouse have 2 cars. you're working at home all the time now, and you're almost never driving the speed car, whatever, sports car, and you're never driving the truck, you may cancel your any sort of subscription type items for that. Maybe XM radio, maybe even oil changes and such, because you're never driving them anymore. But unless you're never going to crank that up for quite some time, you're definitely not going to cancel your insurance. You're not going to just cancel things that kind of take away the ability to use it at all. So don't do that. Don't hinder yourself in your business. But there probably are some items that you could cut that are no longer needed or that aren't in use. The final thing is, as far as cutting costs, and I put this in here for cutting costs because although it's an expense, most likely at the beginning, it still can be, it easily can be a cost saver. And that is, are your employees, the ones that have went home, are they using a machine that has sufficient power like they had at the office to do their work? I'm seeing a number of people that we're working with, they're at home, they're trying to use their home computer, and they don't have multiple monitors. They're using a laptop that was built in the 90s, and it takes literally a minute and a half to open up a web browser. Those types of things, it would actually save the company money if they just went and bought a machine and gave it to that employee to use while they're at home, because they're going to get their work done so much faster. So just something to keep in mind there. Pillar number 2, this is the work environment planning. So that is something that I think all of us are definitely having to consider now. And that is, it's something ComTech's had to consider. We've kind of changed a tremendous amount in this pandemic, because our conference room looks very, very similar to that conference room and has all year round. The chairs have not moved very much, except for the Tesla things that we've done and those videos and such we've done, but no one's there. And obviously that's kind of stinks on one hand, but there's some serious advantages on the other hand, and I'll talk about that here. So it might just be time for a change. And that's the way that we were thinking about this when as we were going into this. It was a struggle on me personally, because I like having our team members at the office. I like seeing everybody every day, that sort of thing. But maybe it's time for a change. Maybe it's time to let everybody go home and see if productivity still stays there. Can we still cope with it? That sort of thing. So you may be thinking about the same thing. You've probably already sent employees home. But if you haven't, then, or you're thinking about doing it more on a long-term basis, here's some questions for you, and we'll actually dive into each one individually here. So the first question you want to ask yourself, which is very, very obvious, but I want to put it in here because you do have to really ask yourself, don't just make assumptions that, oh, that person can't do their job at home. So can they do it literally? Management, if your management is sitting in meetings a good chunk of the day, like they are over here on this left-hand side, there's probably a good chance that they can do their work at home. They can use a collaboration tool of some sort, like Microsoft Teams or Slack, to have their meetings virtually. They can use Zoom. There's ways to do it. If you're an accounting person, and that accounting person, one of their struggles is, hey, I have to receive the mail because I have checks. I've got to be able to mail stuff out. Certainly that's a worry. That's something we deal with as well. There are services out there where you can switch from, you send all your mail over there, they scan it in, and they send it to you in an email. Not saying that's what to do. I'm just saying that is an option. Or at least think about, can you switch most of your clients and such, the communication, the invoices, Do you have the ability to switch them online so you can reduce the amount of times that accounting person has to come back to the office to grab those pieces of mail? CNC machine operators right here. If you're one of those guys or you have employees like that, quite honestly, I have no ideas on that. I don't see you sending a CNC machine home with the employee. Those people they might be a little bit stuck as far as the hands-on work. They have to do it. They have to be at the location. And then customer support. I would say most customer support can be done remotely with the right tools, with the right communication from management on the policies, that sort of thing, which we'll go into here. So I know that you guys probably speak with our tech support a decent amount, and just about all of them are working at home now. So talking about the physical items that I just mentioned that you need when the users do go home, I did a YouTube video at the beginning of the year, closer to the beginning of the year, talking about these items and giving you, it was a 3-minute video saying these are some of the things you want to think about. So those physical items are, as I've talked about a couple times on this webinar, is do we have a computer for them to take home? Is it going to be a laptop? Is it a desktop? Are we going to use their home desktop? Are we going to allow them to use that and access our company data? There's a couple things we need to think about, which we'll go over in just a few minutes. Extra monitor or two. You can see I'm actually at home right now, but I have 3 monitors. I've got 3 27-inch monitors, so it makes it very easy to work. If your users are at the office, they're used to having a couple monitors or even a big monitor. They go home and start trying to work on their couch with the laptop, it changes everything. Productivity kind of it drops dramatically. Wireless keyboard and mouse. If you're sending a laptop home, using a mouse pad is very, very different than using a keyboard and mouse like you're used to. Webcam, definitely think about that if you're going to be doing any sort of meetings. Desk phone, I highly recommend, we'll go over this in a minute, but I'm seeing a lot of companies send their users home without a desk phone, and it works. Don't get me wrong, it definitely works, but having the desk phone, something they're used to, with as many buttons so they can see who's on the screen or who's on the phone, they can see it on the screen, they can transfer calls easily. That sort of thing is much easier to do on a desk phone than it is a mobile app. Can it be done? Absolutely. Do I think it's the most efficient way to do it? Absolutely not. So headset, that goes with the desk phone if the users were used to using the headset so they could keep their hands free. Power cable for the phone, that's a good idea. That sounds obvious, but a lot of our clients have power over Ethernet. So if you plug the internet cable in the back of the phone, it gets power. When you go home, their switch probably isn't going to have that capability. So they're going to go home, plug it up, the phone won't come on. They'll call you as the manager or the owner. They'll call you frustrated, or they'll call us. If they call us, that's fine. We can ship them out a power cable. That's not a problem. Longer Ethernet cable, you're not always going to have the router directly beside where they're wanting to plug their phone up or their computer. So just think about that. Their house may not be wired like you need it to be. Software, so line of business applications. Do they have the ability to have this pieces of software that they need at home? Are they going to be able to use their CAD programs if they're in manufacturing? Are they going to be able to get into the EMR, QuickBooks, that sort of thing? Or can they remote back into the office to get that stuff? So just those are pretty simple. Pretty much everybody thinks about those, but I like to put them on here. Communication software, that goes back to Teams and Slack and that sort of thing. How are you going to stay together as far as a team Also, that goes as well for your office applications. Are they going to be able to install Outlook on their machine? Or are they going to have to use a web browser and just access it via the web? Home computer, this is the stuff I talked about earlier, which is, do you have all of these items if they don't have them? If you're allowing them to use their home computer, are you going to say, hey, you can install your office applications on there? Do they know how to do it? If they don't, of course, get with your IT department. Another thing is, are you going to force your antivirus on the home computer? If you're accessing company data, at least here at ComTech, you're going to be doing it on a ComTech machine. If you want to access it any other way, then you're going to have our antivirus on your machine. That's just for us and our team members, because we want to, security is a pretty big thing for us, and we want to make sure that we keep security across the board if it's accessing any business or client data. This brings to, and some of the things I'm talking about here lay right into this, which are, we need to think about the policies that we have as a company and how we're going to push those policies out and enforce them and such. Everybody working from home or everybody working remotely in any fashion, you end up with a little bit of some different policies that you don't normally have to have. One is communication. So one's going to be, how are you going to report when someone's out sick, when they're late to work? Late to work at the office is pretty obvious. You're not physically standing in front of me, at 8 o'clock in the morning. Late to work on your computer or clocking in and out, it's a little bit different. We've just got to come up with some ways. There's pretty simple ways to do it. But just think about that, because you may run into that struggle. Security, we just talked about, which was, are you going to enforce the antivirus? Are you going to enforce some other type of training or something that's mandatory now that people are working from home, such as cybersecurity training, that sort of thing? Another thing is, I haven't seen it be a huge problem, but I could see it be a problem. And that is still making it clear on what you consider to be the dress code or environment, what is acceptable. It sounds crazy, but I could see where there could be problems with if you don't have a policy that just simply states, hey, you need from 8 to 5, you need to be video meeting ready kind of at all times, just like you would be in the office. That way it's clear. If you're sending everyone home, you still need to be presentable, because we're going to have video meetings. There's a chance we're going to have video meetings with clients. Again, all of this is based upon your business. Some people don't have these video meetings. They don't do webinars like this, so it really doesn't matter. So just something to think about. Now, one thing, this is getting a little bit into the very specific pieces of what I've kind of seen with COVID, and that is dealing with what I'm calling the new. That is dealing with that change that I've talked about many times. And some of the things that I think that you can potentially do are short mini trainings. Either have ComTech do kind of a webinar like this specifically for your employees, or look at any of our webinars and our videos and such on YouTube, but short mini trainings on how to set up your work area at home. We've had a number of people come back to us and say, hey, I'm still working off my kitchen table, and I'm really struggling because I'm trying to use the mouse pad, and I don't have a mouse. What's the best way to do it? And my recommendation would be to talk to the people that are already doing it, like us, or if you have anyone in your organization that works remotely all the time, talk to those people that are successful at it. There are a number of things that you can do, like getting enough space to set up your work area. Make sure you have enough space for your desk phone. I'm going to keep mentioning that. But those sorts of things may seem obvious after the fact, but they aren't obvious to, I would say, most. When they go home, they think it's going to be just as efficient to work on their couch, sitting on their couch with their laptop, and 9 times out of 10, it's just not. It's not the same as coming into the office and sitting at a desk. Setting boundaries with your family during work time. I don't want to go too deep into that, but I just want to say that you can run into problems, owners, managers, that sort of thing, with everything's a little bit more relaxed because everybody's at home. We're at home, the kids are right there. They can kind of walk in and out and that sort of thing. All based upon how your business is set up. It's perfectly fine. It's just be aware that that could potentially kind of sidetrack your employees with distractions and such. And just think about that. I don't really know how to put that into a policy. I'm just putting it out there so you can be aware of it. And then what you expect as the owner or manager daily or weekly. So I expect pretty much for my team at 8 a.m., depending on what team it is, at 8 a.m., if I call you on Teams or I video you on Teams, I expect you to be ready. Just like I would expect you to be ready at 8 a.m. if you were in the office. I should be able to walk in your office and you're kind of ready for me. So you should be working at that time, but set that expectation going in. And just if you're very clear about that, then it makes life so much simpler. I put this one, I put it in all caps at the end. So constant communication, use video. This webinar would be totally different if you didn't have my face. Maybe it would be better, but it would be totally different. It would also be totally different if we did away with the slides and we went to just a phone. So just calling in on a conference line or something like that. It's a totally different experience. So just think about that. I stress the using the video. I love video. It makes it to where it really feels like it's a conversation. We were just standing there in your office. The last thing I wanted to put in here is, this is mainly for the managers, follow up with your staff. That's something we haven't done as much as I would like, but we're starting to try to change it. Not everyone is going to adjust to this way of working or working remotely or through Teams, that sort of thing. Not everyone's going to adjust as well as others. We have a number of employees that have told us that if you sat them at home every day, they weren't allowed to go out to see a client. They could talk to them on the phone all they want, but they're not allowed to do any on-site deployments or anything like that. They said, I'll be honest with you, I'd be out of here because I can't stand sitting in there. We have other people that say, I love working from home. I don't want to go on site anymore. I'm perfectly fine with that. So just be aware of that as a manager and follow up with your staff and kind of probe them and say, hey, how's it going? What struggles are you running into? Do you have the tools you need to? That sort of thing. Some of this stuff seems obvious, but we can all get so busy and kind of stressed out that we forget those things. The final pillar is communication. So this is what I call the basics. A headset, your desk phone, a longer Ethernet cable, a power cable. I've seen it recently. We've got a tech that has been doing business with a local insurance firm, and they called the insurance firm. They've been a client for about 20 years, and they called the firm. The firm didn't answer, which is okay. They leave a voicemail. The next day, the firm calls them back. The problem is the firm called them back from one of the employees' cell phone numbers. Well, this tech, he doesn't answer phone calls that he doesn't know the number, primarily due to a couple of months ago when all the political stuff was happening and you were getting a call every other minute. But he didn't answer it. So he gets the message, he calls it back, he leaves a message, he calls the main business number back, leaves a message. Long story short, that went on back and forth. And they ended up calling from multiple different cell phone numbers, which confuses the client, which was this tech. And it actually was enough to, it was enough of a frustration where this tech said, I'm going to start looking at some other options because this is not, it's not the same client experience. It's frustrating to do business with them, that sort of thing. That example, I wanted to mention that because you want to make sure that your clients aren't feeling the same struggle. If you've sent all your staff home, are they calling people directly on their cell phones and not going through the business number? Are they giving your client a different experience that's most likely more frustrating to deal with? So, because most people don't like change. So, any sort of different experience most of the time is frustrating. And just think about that. Um, Another thing is you'll have reduced water cooler time. I put that on there, although I don't know how many people have a water cooler anymore, but you will have reduced time where people are standing around going, hey, how was your weekend? I'm making coffee. Did you have a good weekend? That sort of thing. Most people aren't going to pick up the phone and call their team members and just say, hey, how was your weekend? How was your weekend? That type of thing is pretty crucial though in just team building and just everybody getting along, that sort of thing. um, I've already mentioned that meetings are very different over phone only. Just call into a conference bridge versus a webinar like this. So just think about those things. I'll talk about how you can kind of handle that here in a second. Something else as far as communication and collaboration, I hate using that buzzword, but that's what it is file sharing. How are you guys going to share internally all of the files that you need to get to as a business? We've had a number of our clients who've used, as you can see up here in the top left, this is SharePoint. Down in the bottom's OneDrive. Over here on the right is just showing you a copy of our File Explorer. So Windows File Explorer, you can set it up to where all your folders are still in there. Technically, they're in the cloud, but they're there. You don't have to go out to a web browser or anything to get there. But we have a number of our clients that are using this to say, hey, we're going to tear down our entire office. We don't need it anymore. Everybody work from home. We're going to SharePoint. We don't need the server. So we're cutting costs there. There's just a number of things that you can do that allow you to move that data into the cloud. Everybody can get access to it wherever they're at. And it just makes it simpler. ComTech's recommendation, you guys probably have heard about this. I just did a 3-week webinar series on it, on Microsoft Teams and managing remote workers and all sorts of things. Is Microsoft Teams is what our recommendation is. You can definitely use Slack. That's obviously another very big player in the industry. You can use either one. We're going to use Teams because we're primarily Microsoft here. I did have one point I wanted to mention with this. Using those collaboration, communication type platforms internally, we highly recommend you use a business class software. Do not use a free one. If you want to use a free one, that's fine. Just remember, free means unsecure. So if you're putting client data in there, and if you're going back and forth with some confidential information, I don't recommend it. That free is free. I mean, that's what it is. That's what you get as far as security goes. So just think about that. Another thing that is nice, very, very nice with these pieces of software is you can record your meetings. So if you're doing a training or something like that with the whole team, you can record it. You can always have it. Makes it nice. Another thing is sharing screens easily on a one-on-one basis. That's super, super helpful if you're a manager and your employees are calling you saying, hey, I'm not sure how to do this in the EMR system or in the accounting software or whatever it may be. In the past, you would just walk into their office. Now it's simple. Just say, hey, share your screen and I'll look at it with you and we'll get through it. Chat functionality, that can definitely replace that. It not replace, but it can get there of that. How was your weekend? If you look at our chats here in ComTech, a lot of them, I would say, especially on Monday morning, are pretty crazy. There's lots of funny pictures going back and forth, and they're joking around saying, "How was your weekend?" That environment is easier to be had in a chat type area than it is on picking up the phone. Like I said, most employees are not going to call every other employee and say, "How was your weekend?" But if they can blast it out in a chat and go, "Hey, how was everybody's weekend? Did anyone do anything kind of interesting?" It makes it easier to still have that team atmosphere. So with the final thoughts, this is pretty much it, and then I wanted to open it up for questions. Is we will 100% learn a lot from this year. I know that I've learned a lot, at least. One of the things that we're going to learn here at ComTech, this of course goes back to what your business is as well, but certainly some pieces of your business. In the past, we used to have kind of inclement weather days here at ComTech. If it would, if it would snow a couple feet or something, well, who am I kidding? It's North Carolina. If it snows 2 inches, the whole world shuts down over here. But if it shut down, the majority of our clients shut down. So we would go off and we would play in the yard and have a snow day, that sort of thing. Well, because no one could get to the office. Now, yeah, I don't think it's going to matter. We're going to be back working again. Obviously, I'm going to be careful of that and make sure we don't overwork everyone, but it's definitely possible that there are no more inclement weather days. Sick children, not as big of an issue because that person can keep working. Ability to hire anywhere, that's a huge thing. We've started looking at that. We've started implementing some pieces of that. But imagine if you really could deal with your customer service and that sort of thing, and you could do it all remotely. So that way you no longer have to hire locally and just have your local market, but you can hire accounting or whatever it may be, obviously based upon the job, but you can hire across the board. So that might open your pull up quite a bit. Potentially less physical space. If you're not hiring people to come into the office, you don't need as much space. You probably don't need as big of a building. You don't need as big of a lease, that sort of thing. That's something that changed dramatically for us. We were running out of room here at ComTech. We were totally running out of room. A lot of people didn't have offices. We were trying to figure out how to handle that. Now, it's perfectly fine because pretty much no one's in the building, or the majority of people aren't in the building. It also gives you the ability to, and this goes back to the owner and manager primarily, it goes to the ability to alter benefits and alter pay. So some employees want to work from home. Some are willing to take a pay cut. I'm not joking. Some are willing to take a pay cut to work from home because they don't have to drive 30 minutes into the office. They don't have to maybe get dressed up as much. Those types of things can be alternate ways to where you can use as benefits, and you can kind of increase that or increase or decrease the pay or whatever it may be to the employee. Change in security and policies. We've already talked about that. There's going to be things that you need to think about as users are working from home that you may not have to think about right now, but those are definitely, we want to think about them. And then change in needed hardware. In the past, ComTech totally used desktops. Everybody had a desktop. We made the decision earlier this year, everyone's getting a laptop. Pretty much. There's still a few desktops around, but mostly, even myself, I've got a desktop here, but I've got a work laptop. I can go into the office, plug into a docking station in any office, and I can work with 3 monitors, unplug, come in the next day, go into a different office. Really makes no difference. Last thing here before I open it up for questions is, if you haven't heard about the Tesla giveaway, please go out to that website. There's definitely still time, but the entries still keep coming in quite a bit. But we are giving away pretty much that car. It's a little bit different, but almost that car on Friday. So definitely go out to that website. It's pretty interesting if you want a Tesla for Christmas. Keely, that is all I had, and I think I finished up with 1 minute or like 45 seconds left. Did you have any questions, or if any questions came in?
There was one that came in. There were a couple actually. So you mentioned Teams. How would you recommend someone start using that platform?
Yep, absolutely. So with Teams, I would recommend going on YouTube and looking at a couple of our videos. If you go in YouTube and you just search for ComTech Network Solutions, you will see you'll see all of our videos. And I've got a number of videos on Teams, and I don't have any videos on exactly how to implement it, but I do walk through the process of how to use it, and it's pretty straightforward. If you have any struggles, definitely just email us at support@comtechnc.com. We'll be more than happy to take a look.
All right. And then another one is, who does someone need to speak to about analyzing their phone or internet bill to ensure that they are not overpaying?
Perfect. If you email either sales@ComTechNC or support@ComTechNC, doesn't matter. Or if you want to give us a call, you can definitely call us, and you can choose sales or support. It really does not matter. All the techs can look over it. All the salespeople can look over it. It's something we do day in and day out, of simply just saying, hey, these are what these charges are. This is what we kind of see in the industry as far as there's a good chance you're overpaying or underpaying, and I would kind of leave it alone. So any of the techs or sales reps will do.
All right. And we've got one more here. How do you know if an employee's home computer is powerful enough to work on versus buying a company machine to send home with the employee?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, very good one. So what the easiest, the simplest thing would be, and this isn't very specific, but when did the employee buy the home computer? When did they buy it? Where did they buy it from? Versus when did you buy the computer if you're the owner? When did you buy the computer for them at work? And who did you buy it from? And what I mean by that is, if they bought their computer 5 years ago from Best Buy and it was a special on Black Friday, and you bought their computer from an IT company that only sells business class machines, and last year, you're going to know your answer. If you have any specific questions around that, I highly recommend you email support@ComTechNC and just say, hey, I've got these two machines. Can you tell me what you need to know, or how do I find out the information? And ask our techs, and our techs will be more than happy to say, hey, go here. I need this information from it off the back or whatever. And then I can tell you exactly which machine's better and how much more powerful. And based upon that, what you're running. So are you running a browser-based ERM system or EMR, EMR system, or are you running a CAD program? They'll be able to ask those questions and tell you whether or not that's most likely powerful enough. Keely, were there any more?
Nope, Ethan, that is it, I believe. I don't see any more in the chat, so I think that's all.
Okay. Well, that sounds good, and I certainly appreciate everyone joining. If you have any questions, there's my information. Feel free to reach out, and I appreciate everyone's time. Hopefully, you've got a few nuggets there that you can go and use to plan for 2021.